Hello. Good
Hi
evening.
there.
How are you?
Good.
Hello.
Early. The early birds, huh?
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Excuse me 1 second. Changing my shoe.
Is it mandatory to stay for the entire task force meeting? There's also a tenant association meeting happening at the same time in about 45 minutes.
No, there's no requirement like that for committee meetings, so stay as long as you can and come back afterward if it's still going.
Okay.
Just appreciate you taking the time you can.
Oh, sure. And I was thinking to tune in with my phone and stuff. So
Doing double duty?
sure, why not? I'm just like,
Um, good deal.
Hello.
hi, Mary.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hey everyone, there's still a minute to go before the scheduled time, but I believe we're also waiting for a few other people to come on. Are we waiting for more folks from Parks to come on?
I think Davey is going to be coming in. Davey Ives. I'm not sure if James is coming. I think it's Davey.
Okay, and I saw Anya Hoyer, who's with the Partnership for Parks, had also signed up, so
That's
we'll
probably
see.
it.
I will defer to the co-chairs as to when you want to begin. And just let me know before you get official about it, because I will hit the record button then.
Good evening, everyone. Anastasia from CAU Mayor's office.
Hello, my friend.
How's everything, Sean?
Good, nice to see you.
Likewise, always. Thank you.
Alicia, Laura, could you mute yourself, please? Talisha, I think we should wait for Davey, as you know, he's critical to this discussion. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I think you're muted.
Hi, Davey.
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Just want to check. Can you guys hear me all right? Great. Thank you. Hey.
See your note, Talisha. We'll wait until 6:35.
Is everybody able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Okay, I will begin recording, co-chairs.
Yeah.
And you're all set.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sean. And welcome to everybody to our Flatbush Avenue African Burial Ground Task Force meeting this evening. We have several members or several representatives from the Parks Department here with us this evening, including Davey Ives, amongst the rest, as well as lots of community partners who are who have been very involved with the Flatbush African Burial Ground. Um, and we're happy to have you all tonight. Our aim for this evening's meeting is to probably pick up where we left off from the Parks Department meeting that was held this past Monday evening, and to hopefully clarify some topics that were brought up at that meeting, and to expand on our understanding of where we're starting from in terms of the Flatbush African Burial Ground. So I think that we're good to just get started. Am I right, Sean? Or that we can just get started with probably the Parks Department to say a few remarks. And are we waiting for anybody from the council member's office this evening?
The council member said that she would probably be jumping on a little late tonight. She had another obligation.
Okay.
So we'll see her when we see her. She is aware of it. She's going to do her best to get here as soon as she can.
Okay. So if it's okay with you, Davey, if you're all set, maybe you can just give us a little summary of what was discussed on Monday evening at the Parks Department um, meeting. And afterwards, we'll have time for questions and answers session amongst the community that is present this evening. So you can take it away, Davey.
Okay, great. Thank you, Talisha. And thank you, Community Board 14 and the task force for having us from the Parks Department to continue this conversation. I also just want to introduce Emmanuel Thingay, who's going to be the lead designer on this initiative, as well as Jim Morris from my office. So my name is Davey Ives. I'm the Chief of Staff for Operations. I see a number of familiar faces from the call on Monday. So I just want to say thank you again to everybody that made it to that meeting and that was able to organize and get other people to attend. We had about 190 people sign up for that meeting. And I think, I don't remember what the exact peak turnout was, but it was about, I think, over 100 people. So I just want to say thank you for that. As far as this project goes, we're really excited to work with you, you all and the community member. Thank you. 112 people, I think, is what we peaked at. Thank you, Joanne. I think this is a complicated site. I don't think I need to say that. I think everyone is well aware of that. We are the Parks Department, and we're going to be doing our best to try to meet the community's expectations and try to help develop these ideas in partnership with the community, whether it's the task force or a coalition or any other groups of the community. So we just want to get as much feedback and as much information to our design team as possible so that they can really make a site that is something that the community is going to feel proud to call their own, and that people are going to really want to take ownership, and this is ultimately the community's land, and we're just kind of stewards of it. So it's our responsibility to listen to everybody, and to acknowledge the past and what's happened before us and what will happen in the future. So just getting into specifically where we are in the process. I don't think I have to talk about what happened prior to the site becoming a park. So as far as the last administration goes, but officially now this site has been turned over to the Parks Department. So it is Parks land. It is protected by state and local laws that preserve it as Parks land. So will not be developed into any sort of building. So as part of that, we had a kickoff meeting on Monday to start the official parks process, acknowledging that there was a whole HPD process before us, and there was other studies over the years. So Monday night kicked off the parks process. We're coming here tonight to listen more about feedback for what the community would like to do with this very important burial ground site. It is a burial ground, and we want to be respectful through this process. So we at the Parks Department are still figuring out what the outreach will formally look like. Where we plan on having a couple more sessions, acknowledging that this burial ground is different than most of the park sites that we go through with the capital project. It is a burial ground, so it needs a little bit more care. We're going to roll out a plan to table and have some sort of presence in the park. So we just want to start the dialogue as part of the parks process for how we can work with the task force, work with other community groups on how to make this burial ground really something that the community is proud of. I feel like the last thing I want to say about this project is, this is the parks has been given the mission to start to create something on the site. And so, we're charged with getting feedback from the community, and then give it to our professional designers that will be able to do something that's respectful, and that is something that the community again feels proud of, that represents something that's respectful to the burial ground and what this land is. That I think Talisha, I'll turn it over to you. I hope that captures some of it. I hope I didn't repeat myself too much, but I'll let you have the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're gonna just go ahead and keep that conversation going about process. I just want to mention just a note that was put in the chat, and I know this came up on Monday evening a lot, that if we can all try to not call it a site, even though that is a technical word that we use to talk about any location, but a lot of people expressed that we should give this particular site its due reverence. So if we can call it the African Burial Ground, maybe we can just start calling it the FABG, if that's any easier on the tongue. But let's all try to be mindful. And I know, the word site comes in like, it's easy to come off of the tongue because it's just a word that we use. But go ahead, Davey.
Yeah, I want to apologize for that. I think we we do so many projects a year, and I think site becomes a common word that we use to describe all of these projects, but burial ground, and I know that Corazon and I think Shauna and Stephanie, I think, had emailed in, and we will respond to you this week. So I want to say thank you for responding and holding us accountable. And that's, that's an important part of your role as organizers and community members. So yeah, I think remaining and a reminder that it is a burial ground. And I know and we went into breakout rooms. That was part of Monday's meeting. And I hope that each facilitator allowed people to be heard. I know that, we are people from all over the Parks Department, and, there are better facilitators and some facilitators are not, you know, we have expert facilitators and some that are not as good. So, we're trying to work with what we have here at the Parks Department. We are wearing a number of different hats, so we're not professional full-time facilitators. So please bear with us. We are going to stumble through some things, and we're going to rely on you, the community members, to hold us accountable. So I want to say thank you to that. And I want to apologize for, for referring to it not as a battleground. Thank you.
Okay, well, great. And I'm sure that we'll definitely hold you accountable. So we have it on the record now. It's being recorded. So
Yep, it's recorded. Yep. Yeah. You can turn that into a GIF and a meme. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're just going to continue on. As I mentioned a while ago, a few minutes ago, that we're going to keep the conversation on the process. So this is not going to be a conversation to get into the details, about what type of flowers you want to be planted or what kind of signage that you want, but it's to really sort of kick us off with having these conversations with the Parks Department as well as the council member's office, so that the community can really feel like we are all involved in this process. So if you can keep your comments to sort of general things, that will sort of kick us off on this journey. And then as we go along through this entire process, which I don't know if Parks Department has a sort of idea about schedule on this that you have, or a preliminary schedule. But as we go along, of course, we can more so get into details, especially if there are community engagement and community outreach events that are going to be held. So I just want to read this quick thing to say that the intent of this comment period is to permit the board and the community a chance to hear diverse perspectives on public issues. We're allowing for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes for each person who wants to speak. We ask that you raise your hand by using the raise hand feature on the WebEx. That way we can get to everybody's comment, or you can put your comments into the chat and we'll address the chat comments / questions as we go along. So uh, um, so again, I just want to reiterate that we're going to be dealing with, this is going to be a conversation about the process. So let's try to keep our questions about the big picture of the African burial ground, and let's not get too much into the weeds. So if you have a question or comment that you want to kick us off with, please use the raise hand feature, or you can type in the chat. I will go with, I saw Dwayne Joseph, who's the co-chair of this CB14 task force. I saw your hand up first, and then I'll go to Corazon.
Thanks, Talisha. Davey, thank you and your team for being here tonight as a follow-up to the discussion on Monday. One of the concerns that was brought up during that meeting on Monday, or suggestions that was brought up during the meeting, I should say, was, what's Park's plan to engage the community? And I'm wondering, you know, I know the city council member had said that she wanted to see more meetings, and she had already spoken to the commissioner about extending this process to ensure that the community was going to be engaged. Have you had a chance to speak with, all the parties involved there, Parks, to talk about moving forward with engagement and what, based on some of the suggestions that were made, has there been any progress on how you're going to look at that? Can you just kind of expound on it?
Yeah, I can try my best. And I think, we've had conversations with Commissioner Marr. Commissioner Marr has spoken to the council member. I've spoken to the council member. This is maybe would it be helpful for me to just go through what our standard process is and then kind of what we're thinking about adding on? Okay. I see some heads nodding. Okay, great. Our standard process is, we rely on, oftentimes when a park is funded for capital renovation, what happens is there are groups, there are task force, there are organizing parties that are trying to, sports leagues, whatever they are, that are trying to get that amenity renovated or upgraded, or whatever term you want to use depending on the site. Obviously, we have about 90 active capital projects in Brooklyn. So some of those are small path renovations. Those don't typically have a community input process. It's more there's a path there, we just repave it. It's a replacement in kind project. For bigger ones that will kind of change what that park is going to be. So change the use of that park. So maybe it might have been an asphalt area and now it's going to be a playground with a synthetic turf field, or we know it's going to be geared towards children. That's kind of, if it's a schoolyard, for example, we'll work with the school, we'll work with the council member that normally funds the project, and then we'll kind of do an input meeting like we did on Monday night. We'll have normally about a 2-week period where we keep soliciting input. If the school is very actively involved in the process, and we get some principals that really want to be driving the project and some principals that don't, say do whatever you want, it's a park property. Sometimes we'll meet with the school, we'll meet with students and kind of get their feedback. And then after that 2-week period, after the parks project, or after that initial online meeting, 2 weeks after that, we give all that information to our design staff. So Emmanuel has other colleagues that work on these projects, and they will go and work and develop what's called a schematic plan that goes through a series of in-house Parks Department only reviews. It goes through our deputy commissioner for capital projects. It goes to our commissioner, it will go Commissioner Donahue, and then eventually it will go to the community board for review. And that community board is the next time generally people will see a capital project. So that's when you see kind of the schematic plan of like a map of, there'll be swings here and grass over here and more lighting and stuff like that. Does that make sense, just to level set what a standard capital project, Dwayne?
Yes, it does.
Okay. If I end up talking too long or if I go rambling, just reel me back in. So I think what we're, and from our conversations about the burial ground is, there's been a lot of work already done. And I think we have to recognize that there's a lot of community partners and a lot of community groups that have a lot of interests in the park. So it's not our standard path renovation by any means. So it needs a little bit more. It needs quite a bit more outreach and input for our designers to make sure that they can get the design right. That is something, again, that the community can be proud of. So what we've done on other more involved projects is we will table in the park and just have some sort of on-site presence, because obviously not everyone can call into a Zoom meeting. Not everyone has a time in the evenings to do a meeting like this. So, you know, we would try to be out in the park tabling, you know, developing some sort of feedback where we can get input. Obviously, you can email BK Special Events that email address at any time with suggestions. And then I think probably for this project, we would probably do 1 or 2 more at least online meetings where we would solicit input, or possibly, you know, have some sort of survey where we could show the results of that survey before we go too far down the road with the design. Because I think the last thing we want to do is, you know, send Emmanuel off into the woods. He draws up something that, you know, could be a very nice design, but we don't want, but is not going to be something that the community is going to endorse. So that is kind of just a concepts for what we're thinking about for a more involved input process. We haven't nailed anything down right now. So we're just still thinking about it. It's still open. And if there are, and we're open to suggestions from the task force on how we can make that process better and more reflective of the community. So I hope that starts to get at some of the answers.
A good beginning. Thank you.
It is, that's exactly what it's only a beginning. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Before I move on to Corazon, I just want to mention that the deck, the slides that were presented by Parks Department from Monday's meeting are available on the CB14 website. So if you go to the CB14 website, you'll be able to click on and view the slides that were presented by Parks Department. And so Corazon, you're up next. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for this. My question was also along community engagement, language access, and if there are plans that you have for that, as well as also to clarify, when you're saying tabling at the park, do you mean like at Church in Bedford, or do you mean like Prospect Park?
I'll answer the first one on language. Yes, we do have the ability to get our materials translated into different services. You know, we can also have that as a kind of a live function on Zoom meetings as well. So I think if there are other languages that need to be provided, we can do that. And just let us know which languages are best, if it's Creole or Spanish or anything we can make it happen. The second question, when we're talking about tabling, we're not going to be tabling in Prospect Park. We would be actually at the site itself, because I think that's the best way to kind of really surface who actually goes past the park and who the users are.
So I guess, is it just like standard practice to just call it park for now? Or is that indicative that it's going to be a park?
Sorry, it is going to be a park property.
Okay.
So the Parks Department, it will be maintained by the Parks Department, which also guarantees other benefits. The most important thing is it takes, I'm not sure what the specific law is, but once it becomes a park, it takes like an act of state from the state legislation to turn it into anything else. So it's a very complicated process to turn it into something that isn't a park, which is a good thing in terms of preservation. So that's the most important thing in our eyes, as far as securing the future of the site as a green space. And I'm sorry, I just called it a site again. but
Well, at least you caught yourself.
I'm learning. I'm sorry. So yeah,
We can give you some grace then. I think we should understand that that term is an industry term, and it's very common, like Talisha said. So we can give you some grace tonight as you guys adjust. But moving forward, I think we should all just kind of get in the habit of referring to it as the African burial ground or burial ground, or but to show it the it's just deserved. So
appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that a lot of us, many of us, might need that same grace because I might be prone to call it a site as well. So we're gonna learn. We're gonna learn. So next up is Chair Brown.
Good evening. Thank you so very much, Davey, for the opening sort of, ad hoc information that you gave us without a presentation or a slide deck. So this is a very heartfelt question and probably not an easy question. It revolves around managing expectations and sort of just being maybe a little bit more transparent than parks might be comfortable with. But what I really want to ask you is, what are the barriers here, and what are your pains? And those are important things because we have money constraints, we have time constraints, we have a long process in which the burial ground will be processed and turned into memorialization and a usable space. But I think thinking about the amount of money that we have, excuse me, the amount of time that we have, and then your standard operating procedure and how that may not be congruent with what needs to happen. I just want to give you the opportunity to perhaps let people know, what are your pains? What are the barriers?
I think that's a wonderful question. Thank you, Joanne. I think typically, and I'll just refer to other park properties that we've worked with. Typically, we're kind of pushed in every budget hearing you hear about how long the capital process takes, and that we need to deliver a finished product in a certain amount of time. So that is one constraint that we're up against. I think probably given the complexity of the site, I think that can slide a little bit, given how how much attention there is on the site, how important all the outreach and working with community members is going to be. Another pain point is going to be when it comes to our flexibility in choosing, who works on the site, who actually does the design. Aside from it's going to be a park employee, so it's going to be Emmanuel, but Emmanuel is only one person, so it's not a whole team of people that's going to be working on it. Obviously, Jim, myself, Anya, who is with us with Partnerships for Parks, are going to be supplementing that work to try to help Emmanuel get as much feedback as possible. But really, it's only a small handful of people, and we have, we are taxed in other ways to work on, this burial ground project. I think as far as other pain points, otherwise, we are also constrained in terms of how we can procure services. So when it comes to archaeological services, I don't know, Emmanuel, do you have any more detail on what that process is like? Or if you feel comfortable speaking about that? That is going to be one where, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we actually looking into that, to our internal process, with consultants that we already have on board to see how we can integrate, even at this early stage, to see how we can involve an archaeologist. But having said that, we also want to be sure that that's something, that we are not in the process of getting an archaeologist, that we are not hiring someone that the community would not like to sort of like evaluate the any excavation, so that whatever the finding or whatever the protocol will be is something that is respectful to the community. So obviously we would like to get the community involved. If anything, we've discussed whether we can get a minority, and we are looking into that. If there are minority archaeology group that the city maybe, that we can have them hire people that are more experienced in this kind of uh, in this kind of research, or following the right protocol that would not violate or that the community wouldn't feel is violating the process or the respectful aspect of the burial ground. Again, we say it's not like something we do all the time, but we want to make sure that the community is comfortable with the archaeologists that we select, and again, we've talked about whether we can see if we can put in the spec for example, the site investigation, if we can get choices of 3 different archaeologists or equal, to see who we can get that would be respectful of the burial site. Again, we're at the early stage, so we are open to suggestion, I would say.
So if I can summarize then, with some bullet points, this will be, for the most part, a 100% parks-led project, right? And then pain points that you are a small group, pain point that there is a standard operating procedure, which in terms of time constraints, you are willing to deviate somewhat in terms of gathering as much information as you can to make it the best project for the community that you can. And then lastly, with regards to procurement, it is really a matter of who has the contracts with the city, who is in that system that can accept the project. And,
yes.
and I thank you both for your thoughtful answer.
So next is District Manager Sean Campbell.
Thanks. We were just joined by Councilmember Rita Joseph, so I'm happy to yield if the council member wanted to address the gathering. Or I can go ahead quickly. I think actually Joanne kind of anticipated what I was going to ask about the process. And Davey, one of the things that normally also happens is that in my experience, we've gone to a location that is being considered for a capital project, and Parks then scopes what needs to happen, and then the budget is set from that scoping exercise, whereas the budget for this came prior to a scoping exercise. So I'm wondering to what extent that the budgeting prior to scoping has either been a help or a hindrance to how this project is how we set the process for it. And then also Emmanuel mentioned the consultant that's on this project. I'm kind of wondering what the scope of that consultancy is. Thanks.
Do you want to answer first, Dave?
If you want to answer the second question first, how about you?
Yes. Well, the consultant that we have on board, the city already have sort of, as far in the beginning stage, like for example, revolving site investigation, which we would need to do for any site that we work on. The city already had a contract for, I think, about 4 or 5 site investigation group that are on board, and usually it's a rotation of this group that we go through to do our site investigation. So we don't have a choice on that aspect unless we sometimes we have a request for proposal where we would hire have the engineering as a separate entity, as a separate group, and then they can hire, like, for example, an archaeologist. But in this particular case, in this early stage, we don't have that RFP, an RFP separate for that purpose. So at the beginning, at least to get information, we would like to go with the pre-selected set that we have in contract with the city contract.
So can I say one more thing about the archaeology? It's my understanding, and Emmanuel, feel free to jump in and correct me here, that archaeological services would be needed at the outset when the design is being developed. Yep.
Yes, it will be needed. We had a discussion, we had a meeting internally in which it will be needed at the very beginning, because even the purpose of, for example, when we have a site, we still have to deal with, for example, soil contamination. We want to be sure that there's no contaminant because it's going to be open to the public. To do that very process, we still have to be, there's some excavation that may happen for the purpose of finding that, and so again, anytime you have excavation, we are thinking we will need the archaeologists to sort of supervise the process of how we go about doing that. And we are in discussion, we are already trying to minimize the footprint, the impact we have on the site. And there was a previous archaeological excavation done, and we sort of have a cursory map of where they did these excavations. So we are thinking any future investigation we're going to try to do it at the same location, because they were previously excavated under an archaeologist. So again, we're trying to minimize the impact by not excavating areas that haven't been touched previously. Again, that's
right.
That's
so I think, Emmanuel, that would be the archaeological services at the beginning of the project. We would develop the design, work with archaeologists as for any sort of soil disturbance, to make sure that if we had to do a contamination test or a percolation test, which is another test that we frequently do to test how water kind of goes through the soil and what kind of ground we're working with, then we'd probably also have some sort of archaeological services when we actually go into construction. So
we will also have an archaeological input after we develop the design also, because they kind of set up the protocol to know how the construction will happen. That way we will have standards that are set. That way, when the project is bid on, we could cover the cost of what is actually required in construction. So we will need it throughout the design process, so that we prepare documentation that tells what protocol, what steps they need to take during construction. And that way the contractors can bid on the job properly.
Great.
And we will also be using them during construction, during excavation, make sure things are also supervised. And if something was to be discovered, what is the protocol? How do we proceed?
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sean, I think you might have had a first question, but I forgot it at this point.
It was about how usually the budget follows scoping, and this
Yes.
time whether or not the budget preceding scoping constrained scoping.
That's a great question. It's kind of a chicken and the egg situation. You kind of have to know what you're building to know how much money you need, and then you need to know how much money you have to know how much you can build. So in this case, yeah, Emmanuel.
Can I add to this?
Yeah.
Again, sometimes experience counts a lot. I've been working at Park for a long time, and I think the budget that we have compared to the size of the site that we have, and given that we are trying as much as possible to, again, light footprint but meaningful footprint, we want to be sure that I think the money that we have for the burial ground development, I think, is adequate. Just from a gut, experience of other projects that I've worked on.
Thank you both.
Okay, thank you. The next person up is Robert Elstein, who I see has been very busy in the chat. So your turn.
Thank you so much, Talisha, and everybody. I just want to start off by introducing myself. I've lived in Flatbush for my whole life, and I'm the co-founder of African Graves Matter and also Beautify Brooklyn. and kind of preface my comments and questions with some information that I'm not sure if everyone was aware of. Towards the very end of the de Blasio administration, when the project shifted out of the control of HPD, it was actually told to members of many of the invested parties from the community that this would become a community land trust. So my first question is, which I don't necessarily want answered now, but I think it requires some thought and some, I don't know, discussion internally before this question is answered. But I'd like to know, how did the Adams administration or those working within the administration turn the project over to the Parks Department? Because what we were all told was this would be a community land trust. I'm not saying that I'm against this being a city park, but I personally don't think that that is the best option, but I'm just one voice. Personally, I think that our Congresswoman, Yvette Clarke, has supported this potentially becoming a national park. So I would hope that if the plan for it to become a New York City park were implemented, that is still a possibility that the burial ground can be a national park or a national monument. I guess my more immediate question, which is maybe answerable, is the park going to be staffed, and what are the hours of the park? What is the plan for that? My next question is, why are we talking about construction and building when the project, when it was stated that it would be a community land trust, did so under the condition that nothing would be built on the site? No buildings, no construction of any kind other than that which would facilitate access to the site and minimal impact. Regardless of what the budget is, we don't need to spend the budget. The budget.
I'm sorry
so
to cut you off,
yeah.
Robert, but you're at your 3 minutes. So
Okay, thank you. No problem. I feel, and everything else is in the chat if it's possible to address that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I just want to remind everybody that there are certain topics that are, further down the line. So things like landmarking and, making this a national historic site and things like that, that sort of will come down the line. Right now, we're dealing with sort of the beginning stages and how Parks is going to be working with the community in terms of kickstarting this work. So if Davey or Emmanuel, if you want to respond to Robert's question about building as opposed to
maybe maybe can I talk?
Yeah,
The
go ahead.
easiest one is going to be the hours, and I think we don't know the hours at this point. We don't know what the site, sorry, we don't know what the burial ground, I'm getting better, I swear, sorry. We don't know what the burial ground is going to look like after we go through the design process. So that's still something to be worked at. Standard park hours, I think, are from 6 to 10. But so that's open, that's flexible. We can work with and amend those. So Emmanuel, do you want to maybe address the construction part?
Yeah, again, the question was regarding the use of an archaeologist throughout the process, and considering that the burial ground is going to be a project, as I understand it, since we had the community input meeting where people voiced the idea of for lack of better word, of the development the burial ground as a place where people, not just keeping it as is. So it was my understanding. So I was explaining the process that from going from site investigation to design to the construction of whatever it is that is being proposed and accepted by the community. So the construction is basically a term for coming to fruition the design that was accepted by the community. It has to be constructed. Whether it's minimally, whether the design is minimal, it still is a construction process that by city standard has to be bidded out and go to a construction process. Even laying out dirt path is still a construction process.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to confuse the verb building with
A noun.
the noun a building. We look at it at the Parks Department, as we are constructing something or building something, even if that whatever we're building is a passive landscape or it's a meadow restoration, that is building to us as well. So
Okay, does that clarify things for you, Robert? Good.
It does, and I just
Okay.
can just say the other questions I would like for somebody to address them, but I don't want to take up our time now.
Yeah.
It's about extending the reach beyond the neighbors who walk by the site. I believe that this is a site that mostly who is invested are descendants of those who are buried there. And in the past discussions, that was the first group that is contacted. Whenever there is a burial ground discovered, if there is any way to contact descendants, then that is who is most invested, more than somebody who lives on the next block, more than somebody who is a 5th-generation Brooklynite. So I believe that they need to be part of the conversation, and I think everyone else from New York City needs to be. I think all 5 boroughs, and there needs to be a campaign, not just a single email or a single post, like a video campaign by the city, something to really engage conversation.
I think that we're gonna touch on that, the idea of community outreach and how Parks Department is planning on working with the task force and the community, local community, assets in order to do their outreach. So that's something that we will get into discussing and asking more about. Thank you, Robert. The next person is Dwayne Joseph.
I actually just wanted to kind of quickly go through the chat and just see if we can get some of those questions discussed. But the council member is on the call, and I am, if she would like to address the group here, I'm happy to defer to her. Council member.
Give me 1 second. I was just in the middle of transitioning from one event to another, of course. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all of you that are here tonight. I'm really excited to see. There will be more outreach. This is just the first dance. This is just brainstorming, talking it out, making sure we also are on the same page. Language is the same. In the meeting we had Monday, we learned a lot. I listened and I learned a lot. So that's what we're here for. Today I was having a conversation. I'm not sure. I think it was with Sean. We'll be reaching out to other community boards to make sure that they are also engaged. Engaging meeting people where they are. And it's not only by the site, it's into the communities, into the churches, into the schools, into the community centers, wherever they are. We're going to find our neighbors to make sure that they know about this site. Again, I walk past the site every day for 22 years while I went to teach at PS6, and I never knew it was there. So if I didn't know, there's quite a few people that does not know that it exists. So therefore, the outreach is there, and the money was moved into parks because they were the best person to hold the money because they do capital plans. The other agencies didn't do that. And further down the line, it can also be moved into other hands. So this is not the end of all. This is the beginning This is just at your early infancy. We're still learning how to walk and crawl and make sure we're doing everything intentional. For make sure that we give our ancestors the proper memorial. So again, I'm here to listen and learn, and this is a learning moment for everyone. Someone said to me, maybe this is a way for parks to learn. Park is also learning, and they're coming here with their notebooks, they're doing their homework. This is a new thing that I'm sure Park has done before, but nothing on this magnitude. So therefore, parks will bear with us and be patient in our outreach, in our grace, and patient on how we navigate this space. This space is new to a lot of people. Yeah, some of you have been here fighting for this as well. I'm new to the space. Park is new. So give us grace and compassion as we learn to navigate this space. And if we make a mistake, don't hold it against us. A lot of us have made mistakes. When I first found out about this land, I was like, oh, we should make it into a farm. But I didn't know that it was a sacred land until I found out. I retracted my statement, even though some of you have used that statement against me quite a few times. And I was like, but I did apologize because I didn't know, because you also didn't know. So this is a space of listening and learning and making things right. They got it wrong. They got it wrong twice. They were able to build on this land twice. So they got it wrong. So this is our chance to make it right. So thank you again for everyone that's here tonight. And I look forward to working in partnership with each and every one of you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Councilmember Joseph. And, I just kind of wanted to just piggyback on what the council member just said, and something that was prevalent on Monday evening's call, as well as in the chat tonight, which is to start a discussion about community outreach. And are there any plans right now that Parks Department can share with us tonight about how you plan on addressing community outreach? And I think that one of the bigger questions, or one of the bigger comments that came out of Monday night and is also in the chat this evening, is sort of changing the idea of what the typical community outreach is, and listening to more of the community in terms of how you're doing that outreach and how you're getting the word out about the uh, burial ground. So maybe Davey, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have a concrete outreach plan at the moment. I'm just gonna put that out there. We came here tonight to kind of listen, to take ideas, and I think what we can, I think it's going to take more dialogue, more meetings, and I think what we can do is we're gonna talk internally with Parks and kind of come up with what some sort of proposal about what we're planning to do as far as outreach, and then we can happy to report back, whether it's on email or another meeting. We can do that. I think another aspect here is I think the council member was totally correct. And of course, if someone's going to bring us to school, it's going to be a former school teacher like council member Joseph. We're learning in this process too. So we want to be able to work with as many community members, and we really need your help in terms of getting the word out as well. It's only, if you put the outreach just on Emmanuel, me, Jim, Anya, and a couple other people, it's not going to be good. It's only going to be good if community members can play a role in it and can help us get the word out. So I hope that helps. But long story short, no concrete plans at this point. We're still working on something.
Well, I don't know if Dwayne, if you have another question, but I have a follow-up to that, just real quick. Is there a way that, Davey, that Parks Department is sort of capturing, these comments from the community, from Monday's meeting, from future meetings like Monday's meeting, from tonight's meeting, in terms of because there are some ideas that have been put in the chat that were said on Monday. So I understand that you don't have that process. You don't have an idea of right now of what that's going to look like for Parks Department, but how are you capturing any of these notes?
Yeah, so I think, each breakout room, we took notes and recorded it. And I think Jim and I figured out a way to capture the chat, because that was definitely expressed. So we have that in a bunch of screenshots, but we still have it. And I think the other thing that we've been talking about at Parks is we've been speaking with HPD about talking about some sort of web presence. I know that HPD has their project page, so we're trying to stand up a project page of our own and have some sort of link that would link from HPD's website to us. Obviously, we're not going to, we hope we can work with HPD to get something on their website linking to our page. But once we can stand up that page, we would love to know kind of what kind of information would be helpful to have up on a web page on the Parks Department. Would it be, upcoming meetings or a schedule of when we're going to be tabling? I don't know if it's something that can be posted on social media. I saw a couple comments about that. I think just what is the best way for, and that's kind of an open question back to everyone here. What if we were to do a website, it would probably be a page on the Parks Department website, but what kind of information would be helpful on that page?
Davey, I also want to point out while you are discussing the process itself, one of the things that comes out as a designer, I'm looking that information that we got on Monday and the information that we continue to get, when we group it all together, we sort of get a feel for what the community wants and how we synthesize what the community desire or what's really important and critical to satisfying the community's desire for this burial site. And the more information we get like that, there's some common ground that from the chat room that we had that were repeated throughout the different chat rooms. It gives us an impression of what the community is, at least from this preliminary stage, and that helps us a lot. So it's not just the process of just collecting the information, but that as a designer, the collection of information speaks to us to allow us to get a better feel for how the community thinks, at the very least, in terms of this burial site. I don't know if that helps.
I think that's right. I think that's right, Emmanuel, that it's not just important for you to collect the information if it's going to go nowhere, but for you to actually absorb the information that you're collecting from all of these invested people and entities. So Dwayne, you can go ahead, and then Raul Rothblatt, I see your hand is up. I know you want to speak and you're on the list, but Dwayne had his hand up first. So Dwayne.
I just want to quickly just summarize some of what's been put in the chat. A lot of the questions have been around community engagement. So you guys see how important this is for our community members. Some of the questions around, what the site would look like. Have you spoken to, and I think this was addressed, archaeologists and how the burial ground will be dealt with in terms of excavation, that sort of thing. But one of the points you made, Davey, or rather Emmanuel, is that Parks currently has access to architects who you can turn to help with some of the process. And I'm curious to know, and you guys admitted this a little earlier, you don't have capacity to do community engagement the way that the community is currently asking. Is there an avenue for you guys to reach out to or put out a proposal for and partner with organizations that can help with this community engagement and involve some of the groups and organizations and community members that are asking to be part of the process?
That's what you're advocating.
I am not familiar. I saw that someone in the chat mentioned the DOT's BQE visioning process. We get some, occasionally we'll have some funding to do like planning studies, but that was always tied to the study, and I'm not sure we've done anything where we're contracting specific groups. But that's something I can take back and try to look into. I don't know, Emmanuel, if you've seen
Yeah, I mean, we've had in the past. I think I've not been directly involved with, with visioning system and or charretting or that kind of information. But I think what you talked about, I think we want to have a meeting, between the borough, the design division, the front office, just to again to relate the community's desire to see how we can strategize and what's available under the current city requirement, how we can reach out and get the community more involved. I think we want to, but again, we are within a bureaucracy and we have to sort of work out what's possible to do within the current environment.
Well,
but it is our desire, and then myself, I'm available to do that.
but I think in those discussions, respectfully, and as we said earlier on this call, the playbook you're currently using, you might have to throw it out the window and start a new one. This is different from the traditional sites that you guys work with, and this is something that the community, as you can tell through your meeting on Monday and through the discussion in this chat, there are members of this community and other members around the city that are not represented here tonight, that want to be involved in this process and would like to see it happen. So my question is really about like the question about budget and restrictions, and Joanne asked about your pain points. And there have been other projects I've seen with the city where consultants were brought on board to help with community engagement and that sort of thing. So that's something that I think should be discussed when you guys sit down with the borough commissioner and those folks.
and Dwayne, if there are good examples of projects that have done outreach that you think have done a good job on certain aspects, send those concepts or projects our way, because I think that's helpful, because we're going to have to do a New York City Parks version of whatever that is. Whether we bring in if we can put out an RFP or some sort of whatever the process is going to be. I don't want to say what it is because I don't know. But if there are other projects that have, we really like the BQE's visioning process, we want to see that, or we like, how they report out from that. Let us know so that we know what we can be looking at and comparing.
Yeah, I definitely will. I mean, we have some examples that happen here at CB14, and I know of other examples around the city that where that kind of work is done. So we'll definitely do that. Also, the other part of this is around the communication around meetings and things like that. Having someone that is better versed in community engagement and development and outreach than you guys currently seem to be. And that's not knocking you. I know you have a small team. For them to be able to engage the community, because we're getting questions in the chat about, how are you going to communicate about meetings? Or is that going to be posted somewhere near the site when you have meetings? Is someone going to put some up? I don't know what your current processes are like. Are you using Link NYC kiosks to advertise meetings? Are you Our community, as much as we are a digital world right now, our community is still very much a hard copy, paper in hand community. So what level of outreach is being done there? From a board standpoint, we try our best to do mailings and outreach via posting things on our site. But it's clear to me by the comments in the chat and the comment in this chat tonight and the comments in the chat from Monday that our community wants to see a little bit more engagement. Not only, I mean, here we're being mentioned about, folks are mentioning citywide, but we need to get the information about in the local community first and then branch out.
Yeah.
So, we made an effort to reach out to our neighboring community boards to try and get the information to them to help engage people in the conversation. So I think it's something that you guys need to bring back to those folks that are helping or are going to lead on those decisions and say that this is what the community is looking for. And is it possible?
Yeah, that's great, Dwayne, and thank you for bringing that to the Parks Department attention. So next, we have Raul Rothblatt. I hope I didn't mess that up.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. Great to see a lot of friends here. My name is Raul Rothblatt. I am representing Assemblymember Brian Cunningham's office. And I know a lot of people actually through one of my other activities, which was working to save 227 Duffield in downtown Brooklyn. And we've dealt a lot with city level engagement process. And, we're just going to do our, I just want to do our own process and not wait for another agency to do that. I'm here representing a government office, but I definitely want to encourage kind of grassroots activism, which has been fantastic here. But I mean, the reason I've been dying to speak here is because Prospect Park, which is part of New York City Parks, is doing a really phenomenal job in doing this. So last year we did a Juneteenth event starting at the Flatbush African Burial Ground, ending at Parkside Plaza. This year we're collaborating with the Lefferts Historic House, and so it's going. We're doing this already, and it's coming up on June 17th on a Saturday, and it's a really phenomenal way to reach out, a collaboration between parks and local groups. And it's, we're going to be in the streets. We don't need any digital communications here. We're going to be bringing the sounds and the spirits and the colors and the everything to the neighborhood, to the streets. And I really hope we can make sure that this is as broad of a collaboration as possible and working with as many people as possible. I'm really amazed with what the Lefferts Historic House is doing. They have, for people who don't know, they have been setting up community meetings. They've been doing these visioning things. They started off inviting a lot of, some of the people here today to a really in-person, really dynamic discussion. And I was just stunned to see Prospect Park doing such a phenomenal job of doing that. And then they've been expanding it out. The Juneteenth event is going to be the launch of this space. So the Lefferts House, a lot of enslaved Brooklynites work there. So we're finally going to hear their stories, their names, their lives, and they're going to be included in this. So connecting it to the Flatbush African Burial Ground is going to be a phenomenal opportunity. Yeah, that's my main point. So please stay in touch. I left my email there. And I do have another meeting right now, so I'm afraid I can't spend too much time, but I would love to hear if anybody have any questions.
Well, thank you very much for speaking tonight, Raul. And if nobody has any questions for Raul, or if you do, you have his email in the chat, but we won't hold you from your other meeting.
I'm going to go to CB9 too. So, I mean, we have very little of CB14, but we represent. But yeah, I mean, we will definitely work with CB9. The the 227 Duffield, 227 Abolitionist places in CB2. I'm often at CB8. I mean, I would be glad to spread this beyond CB14, and
Well,
please,
great. Thank
please
you.
use me
We
as
appreciate
a
that.
tool.
We appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for coming and announcing that, Raul. So next we have Melissa Minich.
Thank you. It is Minnick.
Minnick, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, this is going back to just the shift between HPD and Parks Department, but I think that it's really getting at my point is really just about what we've all been talking about and the need for open communication. And I just really see a need for the Parks Department to ensure that everything that's currently up on HPD's website about this, everything about the engagement process and all of the materials for those who maybe haven't checked it out. We have all of our recordings, presentations, post-workshop Q&As, all of those materials for the community workshops, task force meetings in 2020, 2021 are all posted for anybody to see, to really see what the process has looked like, as well as the history of the African burial ground, the about resources, all of these pieces are right there about what this is all about. And I know, Davey, you and I spoke about this a little bit, about what it would look like shifting over to the Parks Department site in the Capitol building tracker, capital projects tracker. And at least on my end, I really don't see where all of these pieces would go. And I just think that personally, I think that this should be a priority for us to have up-to-date, accurate information up, which right now, at least doing a search, all we find are these old meetings, old dated information. And it looks like it still lies within HPD, but also not losing all of that information so that anybody who's new to this, or maybe who's attending for the first time, sees what the process really looks like and sees that we've all been working on this for a very long time. This isn't just an overnight, we just woke up and just decided to do this, and this is how we ended up doing this. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for chatting. Yeah, so Melissa referenced the Parks Capital Tracker, which is kind of our generic tracker for all of our capital projects, where you can see, the status of every single capital project that's happening, not only in Brooklyn, but citywide. So I think the other thing is, as I talked about earlier, we're working on seeing if we can put up our own New York City Parks page that would be on the Parks website that would be about the project. And I think we could definitely reference the HPD site or post information that's our own or new information that comes up. So thank you, Melissa. And I think we'll definitely take that that feedback and work it into something on the website.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Melissa. I know that Shauna, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up something similar around the website and information and transparency, just making sure that it's updated, because I know some people had emailed me to say that they found it difficult to find the link to sign up for the community input session, and that the site was kind of clunky to navigate. So I just wanted to bring that up in terms of process and making sure that things are as clear and simple as possible for people. That was the only thing, but Melissa covered some of it anyway.
Okay, great. So I guess we'll, since it's almost 8 o'clock, I'll take Corazon's comment, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Oh, thank you. The comment just was if there could be a way to ensure that, and you were mentioning that subcontractors were the way that people in the Parks Department could do that type of work with community engagement and architecture stuff. So is there some way that you could have some type of information to help people in the community to get on that track to become a subcontractor? Or if that's the way for them to do this, then can we help them get to that if they have all the information already and they just need help organizing that, if the parks is willing to have some sort of space for that?
I think we would be open to that. I'm not sure exactly what the process to get registered as a vendor. Emmanuel, you might.
I actually don't know myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can try to find out. I can ask around and ask what is that process, or connect you to somebody that might be able to explain what the process is. I'll be honest with you, I don't really know.
I think we would have to figure out, I think part of it is also the budget where, if it can come out of that $4 million, or it has to be a separate budget. Not to get too technical into the city budgeting process, but we have $4 million in capital funding, which is different from expense funding. So Emmanuel, for example, like Emmanuel and our salaries come out of expense funding, whereas like to build a playground, that's capital funding because it goes towards construction. So if we could use it for the capital from the capital budget, it might be one track. If it's an expense budget, we might be another track. All that to say, Corson, we will look into it and we'll get you some sort of answer. I'm sorry. We'll figure it out. We don't know the answer tonight. I'm not going to make up the answer.
Davey and Emmanuel, the community board office will assist too, because we have our links with SBS and WMBE facilitators and stuff like that. So let's work together on that.
I think one question that could be important, Corson, and for the group going forward is what the scope of that engagement process would be. What kind of skills would that firm need to have is something that we would need to consider, right? It's not going to be whether it's a construction firm or a firm that does like activities. The Parks Department contracts for a lot of different things, from movie nights and roller disco events to sewer cleaning services and and like rat abatement, right? So there are a number of services that we can do. So we just have to figure out what a community outreach, like an engagement process looks like from a contracting standpoint.
And from our point of view, David, we would always need someone that would be qualified to do specifically what we are, what we are trying to find out. They'd have to be qualified, have some kind of experience in doing the work of this kind.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we're also limited in kind of how we can pick those firms. So say we get a firm that through this process, but there are two other firms that also bid on the project.
Exactly.
We can't necessarily pick that one firm. Like if Emmanuel's brother starts a firm, I can't pick Emmanuel's brother's firm just because I like Emmanuel. There are lots of rules in place to prevent that from happening for obvious and good reasons.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think that this is a great way to end the night, is to just re-emphasize to Parks Department that this community outreach and the different parts of community outreach is going to be pivotal in the ultimate success of what the outcomes are of the African burial grounds here in Flatbush. So I think that it's a really important aspect of this process for Parks Department to work with this task force as well as the community at large in taking seriously and really digging in deep. Dwayne, I know that you had your hand up before. I don't know if you wanted to say your final comments before we close out. I'm sure that everybody wants to get on with their Friday Eve here. So
just to say thank you to everyone for, especially the community members, for coming out and really pushing the conversation around community engagement and equity. I want to also just encourage parks to look at the faces and the people that are engaged and understand that some of your art, well, a lot of your art, most of it should be um, take into consideration the cultural context, and making sure that there's equity involved here. So but I thank everyone for coming out and participating in this and pushing and driving this conversation. At the end of this, we're still in like the baby stages, like the council member said. We're still learning how to walk in this process. But when we're full grown adults and up and running, the burial ground should be something that we can turn around and say, all of us that are involved here tonight and that were on that call on Monday, that we did a really excellent job, and that we're leaving a legacy for future generations to understand what occurred on that site and how we have grown from it. So yeah, I mean that's my 2 cents, and I thank everyone for their time tonight.
yeah. Glenn, I'll give you a couple of minutes to speak.
I'll be quick. Look, I am all for this idea of community outreach and engagement. I think it's essential. The problem that I have not heard addressed is what is community. This particular burial ground is in Community District 14. So is that community? It's on the border of 17. So is that the community? It's in Brooklyn. Is that the community? One person in the chat suggested we make it citywide. I think we really have to decide what is the community we're talking about that we're trying to engage with. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Again, I think that reemphasizes the idea that lots of people have had, is that community outreach, dealing with the community is going to be a very important step, and probably a first step within this process. So uh, uh, again, the slides from Monday's meeting with the Parks Department is available on the CB14 website. The district office, the CB14 district office is always available to send emails and to call up in order to ask more questions and to get more involved and to be a connection between Davy Ives, Emmanuel, Jim, who's here tonight as well from the Parks Department, and the greater Flatbush African Burial Ground, various groups that are very much invested in making this a very meaningful site. So I thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, you can reach out to the CB14 office if you have any questions about this task force meeting, if you have any further comments that you want to put on the record. You can always send other people to watch the replay of this task force meeting tonight on the CB14 YouTube page. Go to the CB14 website to just get more information and to be in touch. Thank you so much for everybody who attended this evening, because this is a very important and meaningful thing for the CB14 district. So we appreciate it. And I'm sure that the Parks Department appreciates all of these comments and sort of preliminary directions as well.
Yes.
So thank you, Davy and Emmanuel and Jim, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
To everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Have a
Talisha,
good
and thank
night.
you, everyone.
Productive meeting. Good night, all.
Thank you, Talisha.
Good night.
Everyone.
This was cool. Bye, all.
Thank you, Talisha and Dwayne.
You're all welcome. Remember to check the community board site for our next set of meetings. Sign up for the newsletter.